Taking notes. Here we go.
All right, ready? Good morning, Columbus, and we'd like to welcome you this Sunday morning on another edition of Down the Garden Path. As always, Down the Garden Path is sponsored by Greenscapes Landscape Company. Greenscapes is your one-stop shop for everything outside. And if you'd like to call them to have someone come out and help you with a project at your home, you can always call the phone number at the office, 614-837-1869, or you can always email at info@greenscapes.net. And today we have Michael Morris with us, and we always get a lot of questions on our website, info@greenscapes.net, and we've sort of compiled some of those, and Michael's put together a list for me of do's and don'ts of landscape. So I'm gonna try to answer these questions as best I can, but these are all questions that we've collected from you. So if you have one, please send it in and we can address the topic on the air.
And you should let people know. You only saw this for a brief second beforehand, so these are going to be real answers, and it might take you a second to come up with it, but this is using your expertise at this.
That's scary.
Yeah, so, and you can't pass. You can't say, nope, skip it, go to the back, okay? This is not a game show.
Oh.
So, we're going to start with, on the do's and don'ts, and we should also say why we're doing this. It's that time of year where people are getting into their fall prep, and they're thinking they're going to make a lot of decisions now that are going to benefit them when spring comes around. So that's why we're doing this.
Right, yeah. Some things that you may have missed out on, things to do, things to be planning for next year. So outside, it's all about timing, time of year. What's available, what's not available, what we can do, what we can start before fall gets here too late.
Let's start with our first don't. The first don't is don't start without a plan. Selecting plants that look pretty or that are discounted now because greenhouses are going to close up pretty soon. You can have this accumulation of plants or green material and you think, oh, I can do something with that. In your opinion, because you've been doing this, what, over 15, 17 years, something like that? So you've probably seen this.
Right.
Why is it key to start with a plan?
Well, there's two answers to that question. The first is, homeowners just going out, you see things on sale at the local garden center. They're like, oh, well, let's buy this or that and pop it in. Well, it's inexpensive right now, like you alluded to. It's inexpensive because they want to release all of their stock before winter comes so they don't have to care for it over the winter.
And also they lose money if they just let them sit there and die. They're not going to care for them for 4 or 5 months when the winter hits.
Right. So they want to get rid of them. They need to empty the stock. So you buy the cheap plant, you kind of put it in. It's not the best plant in the best spot. So you just buy it because it's a good deal. So you want to make sure if you're just doing a small project at your home, you kind of think it out, maybe do a little research and read and really think about sun, shade, water, size.
So maintenance is another big thing.
So that's sort of the on the homeowner side. When people hire us, we have people that say, well, just come on out and we want this plant replaced and this put in, and in order to achieve a good project, we need to make sure we take all those things into account of how things are going to grow. We don't want to speed through it to get the project in. Also, we need a plan to give to the crew so they know exactly what to do. We need to produce a scaled plan that the foreman can go out and say, okay, this plant comes out, these 4 plants go in, and they have an idea of what to do. Because just to leave it up to them or expect everybody to go there, we want to make sure everybody understands what's going to happen before it happens.
Now, does that include actual written out plans or sketch drawings or that kind of thing? That's what we mean by plan, right?
Yeah, we mean a drawing showing, the house, the walkway or the patio, and, there'll be X's on plants that are going to come out, and labeled circles where the new things are going to go in.
Okay, so that goes into the actual do part of this. Do think long term, keeping in mind that certain plants and trees grow in the path in which they grow out or up. Can you talk about that? Because one of the keys when I was looking at this was some of these things that you plant as they mature might take 10 years to really fully get to that point, which you can buy something thinking, oh, it's only going to be 3 foot tall, and by the end of it, it's 10 foot, 12 foot, and it's blocking out something that you need sunlight.
Yes, that's very true. I mean, you always want to keep your plants, your shrubs, at least 2.5 or 3 feet off of the foundation of the house. A lot of people like to put them too close, and as if you plant a boxwood or a holly or a taxus, you want it to grow, and you don't want to keep hacking off the back of it. So you need to give good plant spacing between everything so everything can reach their mature size, because you don't want to keep everything so small, because then you'd spend all of your time pruning your plants every time.
Well, that would happen when it comes, like in the spring. Even if you do it now, you'd have to turn around and do it again just to get it prepped, and then you're maintaining that for 7 or 8 months, right?
Right. Then you're maintaining that small size forever. We want to, in the first 3 years of a new planting, your pruning is for shape and, try to create matching forms of plants. You're not really going in there and pruning heavily. That's later, once the plants really get mature and have an established root system, that you need to control the growth. But still, if everything is placed properly, most things need pruned once, maybe twice a year. If you have hedges and things, they need pruned a little bit more than that. But you want that spacing so you can control your maintenance.
But we're also talking about the people that are trying to do it themselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
So at Greenscapes, that's something where you have a maintenance program that somebody, from the time that you do the drawings to the conclusion, the maintenance part you're still able to handle.
Right, and we always, the other day I just met a client that we landscaped their house a couple years ago, and she, landscape's getting mature, and, we went out and we went through it real quick about, oh, you're doing a good job with this, here's a better time of year to prune this, and just sort of help them maintain their investment.
Can people start with a maintenance plan? I don't think we've ever talked about this. Can I do an initial, let's say we've got our 3 years to maturity program. If they decide they want to do it themselves, but they've hired you before, is that something they can pull out of, or that they can add in later? So if you've done a project, they can kind of opt in or out year by year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we have a lot of clients that we do. It ranges between what we do. Some we just do spring cleanups. Some we do a spring cleanup and maybe 1 or 2 visits in the summertime, and then come back in the fall. And some we're there weekly. Is whatever they would like. We always we adjust to what the client would need.
So each program is adaptable to the homeowner,
mm-hmm.
or the commercial space that you're doing.
Same thing. Some people like to be really involved, and we've done a couple big projects for one client, and this is something we've never talked about, is don't be afraid to pull out overgrown shrubs or trees, overgrown plants, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. We always talk about planting things. Do you guys do that? I mean, since you're in the green and the growing business, how do you feel about when you have to pull those things out? Not that you've done, but somebody else has done it, and you go, that's never going to work. It's not going to flourish in that system, and now you have to rip it out. This morning I was at a house in Westerville that we planted, and we took out all the plants that were planted 2 years ago by somebody else, because the people just bought the house, because they were the wrong plant in the wrong spot. They were all going to get too big. Everything was too close to the house. So we took all those plants out, placed them out in the yard because they had some woods around them, and took all those plants, reused them, but they were not good choices for where they were planted, and we put correct plants in. A lot of times you have to think about plants as decorating your house. At some point you get annoyed with how your house looks, and you're going to take down the wallpaper or paint, do things like that. At some point in your plant's lives, they're going to reach the end of their life cycle. Not every plant is going to last 30 or 40 years in your landscape. Now, you want to, when you do a good design, is place the trees and have your walking paths and patios as something that's going to last a long period of time. But at some point after a while, the plants will get just too big, or we were at another client's house, and her coneflowers were 5 feet tall, which was amazing to see them that tall. So we're like, well, they really like growing here. And she's like, well, I fertilize, I take good care of them. We said, well, we need to take these out and put a different plant in if they're gonna get that big, because it's too big.
I feel like you're cheating, because the next due kind of has to do with what you just said.
Oh, no.
So the next due is to decide where you spend your money based on how long you're living in a house and what you're going to change in the future. So if you're starting, we discussed this I think 3 weeks ago, if you're starting like a small garden that you're eventually going to grow things around it, when we talked about phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, It is deciding the best way to budget your money to do that for long-term growth, but also when you change your mind. Can you speak to that?
Well, yeah, it just goes back to what we started the whole discussion with, is the plan. You know, having that good plan of knowing what's the most important part, what should go in first, what can we do later, how do we make it look good through those steps. I have some clients who are realtors, and we go out and meet with them as they're selling houses, and it's sort of, well, this whole landscape needs to come out, but they don't want to make that investment just to sell
The
a
realtor
house.
doesn't
Right.
to sell the house.
Right, so we do just a little bit of cleanup, maybe we add some color, take a few things out, but we're just sort of working with what we have because of their investment level, because their goal is to sell the house and do sort of as little work as possible to make it look good. So when the first people come in to look at it, they like it.
It's kind of like when they show a house and they bring in furniture, what do they call it?
Staging.
Staging. They stage a house and you go, oh, this would look perfect. And then when you move in, it's just blank walls.
It's not there anymore.
Right.
Same thing. You know, other people, I have a friend and he could not care less about what his landscape looks like. He's like, this is a waste of time. Why does anybody do this? So he has some plants and it looks okay. It looks all right. But it could look a lot better, but he doesn't care. There's no value in it for him.
Because he's just churning and burning.
No, I mean, he lives in a house. They're never going to move. But he doesn't.
His wife lives alone? His wife doesn't look out in the yard and go, I can't stand with this.
No, his wife's okay with it.
All right. Hopefully she's listening and we weren't picking on you personally.
No. But same thing. He doesn't care at all about it. It just looks okay. There's no weeds. There's some evergreens, a little bit of flowers. That's it. And then, you know, other people want it to look beautiful, and we have those times of years that it looks good all the time.
So in the case of like a realtor that doesn't really care, they just want it clean.
Mm-hmm.
What happens? Somebody moves into that house and they say, I've got big ideas for this. Have you ever worked on a house that the realtor's recommended you, and then you've gone into that neighborhood or that property and you've done it? You know, basically you get to start from scratch because you got it down to the base level, right? And you get to start all over.
It sounds like we know what we're going to talk about beforehand, but
well, this paper kind of helps.
Well, no, on this topic, because we did a house for a builder, and it was a decent landscape, looked okay, but he landscaped it to sell the house, and the new homeowner came in and said, I don't like any of this, and we re-landscaped the house again. So we landscaped the house as it was being built. 6 months later, we ripped out mostly everything, reused what we could, and redid it.
But that goes back to my point about you guys love watching things grow and mature. Mm-hmm. You planted that, so you put in all this hard work and all these plans, and then you had to go rip it all out.
Right.
That can't feel really good.
No, I mean we always try to reuse what we can, but some things doesn't make sense to reuse because some plants are fairly inexpensive, perennials. So if it's not the color or what they're going to like, you know, we just take it home, and usually that's how we landscape our own houses.
Oh, you're just like taking from them and replanting it? Well, some of that, okay, that leads to another question. How much of that stuff can be transplanted from one area to the next? So if somebody had it, say, in their backyard, and if you're looking at it from left to right, can they take it from the left-hand side of it, and then because there's more shade in a certain area, you can put it in the same area on the right-hand side? Like, how much can you transplant?
Usually younger shrubs transplant okay. Perennials almost always transplant well. Trees are more difficult to transplant because of their root system.
I knew that. Root system, see? I was all over that. So, okay, let's go into this because we were talking about reorganizing or transplanting. The next don't always think straight. Don't always think a straight line is the quickest way from point A to B, and it doesn't leave much to the imagination. Now, you guys, Bill kind of talked about this last week, where you don't want to just have something that looks very formulaic.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're designing things, I mean, you design it, sell it, and actually do the work. When you're designing it, are you designing it based on, here's the image they have, but I know that won't work, so I'm going to kind of take a little artistic license with it?
Yeah, I try to get a direction from the client, and that's what everybody at Greenscapes does. But it's our job that they've called us for our expertise to take their vision and create something that's going to look good long term. So, you know, it depends on the house too. Some houses lend themselves to a more symmetrical landscape that's a little bit more linear. But most houses are not that way in where we live. So, a long curve, a long smooth curve in the landscape always looks good because nature is curved. There's not a lot of straight lines if you walk through a forest. There's not a lot of straight lines. Everything has some sort of curve to it or interest. So some depends on the house, but a lot, you want those curves to create the opposite effect of a house, because you still have rectangular windows, straight walls, roofs. So you want to soften that with some nice curves in the landscape.
Is that why you see the gardens that kind of pop? They pop because they're not all. It flows all together, but it's not in a straight line. Like I used to see a lot of things in the 80s and the 90s where someone, like these new build homes, even when you had a bigger yard, everything would be lined up. Like these shrubs and everything would be lined up. Mm-hmm. But now when you go to those properties, those trees are gone because they were overgrowing on each other. Mm-hmm. It became a mess.
There was a landscape company that's no longer here. They like to do their signature landscape plan, which was a blue spruce on the corner, which looked nice, but after about 15 years, the tree got too big and it had to come down. So
at the expense of the homeowner,
right.
Sure.
So it looked nice, looked kind of cool, but every day you drive by those houses, or I did, because this is what we notice, like it's a matter of time before the thing gets cut down. And we had a client in Dublin, and they wanted it, and I explained, at some point you're going to have.
Oh, they had seen this and they
seen it. They liked it. They had like a grayish blue house, so we used a Colorado blue spruce, which it looked nice. But I warned him that at some point in 15 years, you're going to have to cut that tree down and change the landscape.
Let's take a break here because we've been going for 15 straight minutes. But when we come back, we're going to hit the next do.
Good. All right. Stick with us on Down the Garden Path.
Okay.
Let me just wake this up.
Good job, Mike.
Do you need me to
We just, for a moment, Cody Hoots just followed us on Instagram.
follow him back immediately, and get a resume over there.
I know the head DJ over there, so I can put you in contact with
Rachel will be
him.
the head dancer.
Don't need any help, guys.
I think you do today.
Today?
Lunch.
My hair's clean.
You can go over there and have lunch with a view.
How is lunch there?
I've
food
actually
used to be
only
awesome
been there one
there.
time. It was just because I was making their commercials. I had to record some
Here's
audio.
this check. We know you banged up your knee, Doug, but whenever you're ready to come back to work.
Yeah, I fell off the pole.
All right, you ready?
Yep.
Okay. Bring us back.
Thanks for sticking with us on Down the Garden Path this Sunday morning. As always, Down the Garden Path is brought to you by Greenscapes Landscape Company. Greenscapes is the premier landscape contractor of Central Ohio, and we can help you with most anything outside your home. If you want to get a hold of us, please call us at the office at 614-837-1869 or email at info@greenscapes.net. And if you have a question that you'd like for us to answer on air, please send it in to info@greenscapes.net. That's how we build our show, is most of our listener questions. So
Also, they could go on your Facebook page and submit questions there. So hopefully during the day someone will get a chance to look at that, because when we're not doing the show, we're out doing jobs, so
Right.
we can't keep looking at it all day. Let's get back into our do's and don'ts.
Okay.
So we ended with don't always think straight. Don't always think in linear lines. So the next do is think about curb appeal. So this kind of, my question to you, because you're the expert at this kind of goes back and forth. When you're thinking about curb appeal, a lot of people might like that straight, clean look.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you design something that looks appealing to the eye, but also isn't, I don't know how to describe it, like kind of that one-of-a-kind experience that it looks like that's what somebody else's vision was, and that's not mine. Like, how do you keep that in mind?
it goes back to the process of meeting with the client and reviewing our questionnaire that we've developed at Greenscapes, of getting their thoughts on colors and textures and plants they've had in the past that they've liked or disliked, taking sort of the program that they lay out, talking with the client and providing them that drawing, and we just sort of work through it together as a process of, we want to highlight this part of the house, we want to kind of put people's attention over here, or we want people to see the front door. So as someone drives up, what are they looking at, and making it, it's a difficult marriage of what do they like and what's going to look nice.
Well, let me ask you that though before we go past that. What is it that you think grabs people's attention that they like? Because when you're thinking about curb appeal, you're thinking about selling your house or buying a house. What are the things that people look for that you see? Because again, you're doing some of these properties for, Greenscapes has been around 41 years. I'm sure something that Bill worked on 41 years ago still is there. But if I'm looking at to buy a new home or to sell my home, what are the things today that I could do?
It goes back to what we've talked about, spacing. If you are trying to sell a house, a lot of times, and you see this at parade homes. We've done this. We've been guilty of this before. Everybody is. You put a lot of plants in because you want it to look mature. You want it to look impressive right now, because you have your growing time from the time we're done landscaping a parade house to the time it opens is about a week, and sometimes less.
Wait,
than
say
that.
that again. You have that short a time to make?
No, I mean from the time we're finished till
Okay.
the time the parade opens is days. So it needs to look impressive right then. If you go back to those parade houses 2-3 years later, they're overdone, and there's a lot that needs to come out. But that was the goal day one.
For temporary, that time period, that's what it needed to be.
It needed to look great, and they always do. We were at a parade house that we did 2 years ago. The other day, we're doing the backyard for the client, and probably a quarter of the perennials should come out. We did a good job with the plants. They look really nice. They're coming along really well, and they look really good, but it was overdone with perennials. So, because of the goal of the client at the time, that's the route we took. Now, if we do a new client and they say we're going to stay here for 15 or 20 years, we want to take the time to pick those plants as they grow, so it looks nice for them. When you asked about what looks good, you want to have your evergreens to have your consistent color, and that's sort of your backdrop, and then you want to add in your splashes of color with perennials and shrubs, so you have that interest in the spring, summer, and fall.
Okay, so going into our next note, and this is flowing perfectly today. Don't create a monster. Don't start with a spectacular landscape for a short time period.
Right. And
so we kind of touched on that, but so what I want to know is somebody comes to you and says, let's say it's for fall. Here's what I want for spring, and I'm going to overload. I want all these colors. I want all these trees and all that. What do you tell them? Because the client's always right, but what do you tell them as far as you're not going to like this in 3 years?
That's what we tell them. I mean, we at Greenscapes, we're not going to, we want to teach our clients and try to provide them with the best solution. And I've done that before, and I've always pointed out, like the client with the blue spruce, same thing. I said, this is not the right plant for this spot. It is an okay short-term thing, but long-term, this is going to have a problem. It's going to need to be addressed. So we try to educate our clients, but like you said, ultimately, if that's what they want, and we've done our teaching, and they still said, that's okay, I understand, I hear what you're saying, that in 10 years I'm going to have to cut this tree down, but I want this tree, and I'll just cut it down and put another one in. Okay. I've tried to guide you in a direction and give you the information, and that's still what you want. So as long as it's not going to harm anything or be detrimental, in a real way, then it's their property, and it's ultimately their decision.
Okay, so let's finish on a do. Always got to finish on like
A plus.
positive, but you kind of covered it. Do plan for low maintenance. Create a landscape that meets your time requirements as the homeowner.
Exactly.
Because they may not use your maintenance program, but if you have to be the one in charge of the upkeep, if you work 60 hours a week and on the weekends you travel to watch your kids play ball, you're not going to maintain it.
Right. So that's a question that we want to address at the beginning. How much time do you have? Do you have time in the spring
That is
and the
something
fall?
that you ask.
Yeah. We want to stick with plants that don't require a lot of maintenance. Everybody loves knockout roses. I love them too. It's a great plant. But they grow fast and they get big. So you can use them in different places, but if the client says, I'm not going to prune these, then they can't go too close to their walkway because they're going to grow into the walkway. and then when they're coming home late, holding groceries, and the thorns start scratching their arms, they're going to be like, "Why did we put this stupid plant here?" But
Right, they were happy when they got it, and now it's a nuisance.
right, but if it's if they know that from the beginning, they say, "That's fine. I love this plant. I'm okay pruning it 4 times a year." Then we'll put it in. So it's always time versus what you want to do.
Well, it's not just the investment in money; it's the investment in what
Time.
you're actually going to spend doing this stuff.
Mhm.
And if they're not going to pick a maintenance program, they could run into problems. They bought something really beautiful and installed it, and now it's a mess because they don't have the time to spend it.
And I think we've discussed that. We had a project we did a long time ago in Bexley. It was a huge project, huge planting project. It was beautiful when it was done, and then we went by year after year, and then you saw it decline because the clients no longer had the time to put into it. And then they sold the house, and the next people just kind of ripped most of it out because it needed the time from day one. As soon as we left, it needed some maintenance, quite a bit, and they just couldn't do it.
Well, I think that there is only one more do and don't, but we're going to say that for the next time we do this. But let people know how they can get a hold of Greenscapes one more time.
You can always call the Greenscapes main office at 614-837-1869, and you can always email us with questions about your house, or if there, like we said before, if there's a project that you'd like us to look at, and if you'd like us to answer any questions, please email us at info@greenscapes.net. We want to thank you for listening to Down the Garden Path, and we encourage you to listen next week so you can find out more.
Dope. And let's let this finish here.